Freedom is one of my top values. And so, no matter how hard it might be to go through the lulls of entrepreneurship or you're experiencing rejection, isolation, things just aren't flowing consistently on a month to month basis, of course. But I think about the version I was like 5 years ago and the version I am now. And it's like, okay, well, yes, there was consistency in money back then, but am I happier now, even with the things that I'm going through, the challenges? And the answer is always yes.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
Hi, I'm Tenesha. I'm a mental health and wellness advocate, and I'm currently residing in Illinois.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our Behavioral Health Department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is a return guest. We've got Geleen Antonio here today. You'll remember her from the episode, The Power of Travel. And we are so excited to have Geleen back because last time we talked a lot about setting boundaries in our lives, creating the lives that really fits with who we are. Geleen had previously worked as a healthcare professional, had previously been in neuroscience, or worked in neuroscience, and decided to do a complete change of her life. And now she travels all around the world, and we get to live vicariously via social media and watch. And I'm always thinking, what country is Geleen in now? Where is she now? And what is she up to? And since the last time that we talked about the career change, about really designing her life around that, about traveling as an individual person, which does come with a lot of different challenges. And then also we had talked about travel for purpose. So Geleen, her website is Travel Not to Escape, which we always love because yeah, a lot of times it's like, I'm so stressed, I need to get out of this state for a little bit, right? I got to get out of the house and go to Target or something like that. There's so many escapes that we do. And we had talked about workaholism. But travel with purpose is so different. And so Geleen really helps people to set those intentions for themselves because she was able to set those intentions for herself. Geleen is now working on a mental health resource for travelers and a platform for mental health professionals, but also people who have mental health goals to integrate travel into their goals. So welcome, Geleen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you again for having me back. I love this podcast, so I'm so happy you guys brought me back on, and I'm excited to catch up and share where I am now and what I'm working on too.
Yes, and the last time I talked to you, you were on your way to Korea, which is always like amazing to me, because that's a life goal for me too. And so you're always going through now, and you've kind of shifted your focus a little bit. You're focusing really on that mental health aspect. So what's changed? How did this come about for you?
Oh yeah, 2024 was a hard year, I think, for everyone. But especially in my life, it really was a year that had me facing some mental health challenges, and building a business from scratch really is a roller coaster, and a lot of the times you're doing it on your own. So I had navigated through solo traveling around the world on my own just fine, but entrepreneurship was what got me. And doing that while also traveling, it took a lot out of me mentally. And I started thinking, okay, what is it that I want to do, and what can I really provide people? And when we had spoken, I was doing solo travel coaching on a one-on-one basis. I was doing the podcast as well, and mostly focused on solo female travelers. And what this last year taught me was that these issues, these challenges that I was going through was not unique to me. It was not unique to women. So I was really thinking, how do I expand my platform, and how do I make it more actionable, more resource based, and scalable as well? And I thought about my background in neuroscience and healthcare, and also my connections with mental health professionals, as well as my connections with the travel community, and really started to see myself as that person in the middle, the one that could really understand both sides and be able to connect the experts with the people that were really needing some of the support while on the road. And because, as you all know, being US based therapists, it's very difficult to get therapy when you don't have a base. So that's really where I started thinking, okay, well, but does everyone have those types of licensing restrictions? Are there therapists that can provide services to digital nomads or travelers that are long term? Because while you're traveling, there's so many issues and challenges that you're facing, and you can't see a therapist. Like that's when you need one at the most. So that's where the Digital Nomad Therapist Directory idea started. And then from that, I realized a lot of therapists also needed help with their own practices. A lot of them are running private practices, needing help to target this market if that's the market that they want to reach. And so I dug back into my consulting toolbox, and I was like, okay, I can consult specifically for therapists in private practice and connect them with the communities that they're trying to reach. So really, it's just been this really beautiful culmination, I guess, of all of my experiences in the past and my passion that I found.
That's really interesting too that you're kind of helping both sides, like the people looking for therapists, but also able to
Mhm,
connect therapists to those people as well.
mhm.
Has it been hard? Like, is it therapists kind of across in the countries where you travel to, or is it people who maybe live here in the United States or other countries that are able to provide it in multiple places?
Yeah, what I found is that there's a lot more restrictions on US-based therapists than there are for any other country. So, whereas US-based therapists are very restricted even to the city or like the state that you're in, people in other countries are still licensed under their boards, but have more flexibility on the locations of the who they can provide services to. So I have a lot of people on the directory. I think we're up to like 50 therapists now. And I'm wrapping that up and launching that on a full platform in February. So it'll be accessible and editable. But I'm at the moment vetting each therapist to make sure that they have solid credentials and training, and they are who they say they are. So I am doing this like a personal vetting process and credentialing process. But yeah, they're therapists from all over the world. What I found with the therapists in the US who still want to reach this market, they have pivoted into doing a type of coaching practice where they provide services more in a program that is targeted for a specific challenge or methodology that isn't under the same licensing restrictions.
A lot of people struggle with finding a specific counselor or provider. But how does that translate? I know you were saying like far as the restrictions, because even like me, my old therapist that I have in Iowa, she's not licensed now that I moved to Illinois. So, the luxury we had, especially during COVID, doing the virtual, therapy appointments, that's something that can't be offered because, of course, like you say,
Mhm.
the US base, you have to be licensed state to state in order to provide services. Um, for patients. So is they doing it like, don't you know how you have like an exercise program and you can watch like videos related to certain issues? And if just say if I'm having an issue with anxiety, I can go to a specific site and say, like watch a combination of different videos from providers on this particular issue. So that way I know how to cope and deal with that. moving forward, if that's something, like part of something of what your services is going to offer.
Um, I find myself to be the connector between the two parties. And so each therapist has their own set of how they run their programs. I have seen therapists do programs more in a course format or workshop series. It sounds like that you're describing, but others also do it on a one-to-one basis in packages as well. And they have like a 12-week program specific, like an intensive almost. But it's more a coaching based intensive, and they have different wording, of course, to make sure that it's not therapy and it's not under the same regulations.
Yeah. So, I mean, so last time we got to hear a lot about, what that tipping point was for you when you said, I'm going to go travel. I'm just going to go,
Yes.
I'm going to go and travel and I'm going to start all of this. What were some of the challenges that either you experienced as a digital nomad or that other people who are traveling a lot and just don't have, that consistent base for months at a time? What are some of those mental health challenges that you're seeing that people have in that lifestyle?
Yeah, one of the top ones is isolation. And if people don't have a solid support system back home, which a lot of people don't, or they lose touch with that support system, plus they lack the routine if they're moving fast enough, and they're not able to connect with the local culture, then that leaves them isolated, perhaps not even knowing the language or how that particular place works, and they feel a bit of failure in that way as well. So it's like the isolation leading to disconnect, feeling like a failure in this lifestyle that they gave up everything to try and live, and now they're not happy. And a lot of people are also, they may have given up careers in order to do this. And now they're building their own businesses or starting to do freelance and feeling the rejection and the roller coaster of entrepreneurship at the same time, and feeling like they're the only ones that are actually experiencing this. On top of that, a lot of people who take off have some type of catalyst moment that pushed them in this lifestyle. So maybe they had lost a loved one prior and they wanted to use travel as a form of healing, or maybe they had ended a relationship. And I see a lot of those as well. And now they're on the road and using travel as a distraction, but not processing a lot of these underlying issues that they started with. So add the isolation on top of that, and it leads to some really destructive habits. A lot of people escape in other ways, of course. So on top of the travel, maybe they're drinking, maybe they're not taking care of their health in other ways, and it really just compounds until they get to a rock bottom moment. So that's really where I want to address is making sure that there's a community so they don't feel alone and that they have the resources for when they actually do need to have help in that support system. Like I want them to have expert help when they reach that point, or even before they reach that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're making the therapist directory, but you're also doing the Passport to Connection community directory. So is that more like
Mhm.
finding different resources in different areas throughout like different countries, or what is the community directory, and what's the difference between those two?
Yeah, so the way that I'm structuring Travel Not to Escape now is as a holistic travel mental health media platform. So think of like Condé Nast, which is a travel magazine, but only focused on travel mental health and communities. So it's going to be in the three pillars: how to connect with yourself, connect with others in community, and then connect with the world in more sustainable ways, or connecting more with the culture, for example. So under the connect with yourself, that's where you get the articles about mental health and the resources and the directory for the therapist that can provide services to this group. Under the connect with community is the Passport to Connection directory. So there's like a directory, a specific resource under each pillar. So Passport to Connection, it is so, Julie, we talked about South Korea and how when you go to a new country, whether that's to visit or to move, a lot of people, if you're doing this, of course, in adulthood, you're like, how do I make friends? It's been a while since I've had to make new friends. How do I make friends? And there's not a really easy guide for that. And each person is different. Each person is looking for a different type of friend. They have different values and things that are important to them, and introvert, extrovert style, right? And so I was thinking, as I've been coaching people one on one, I've helped them create strategies for how to make meaningful connections in each of these cities. But how do I take what I've been doing and actually create it into a platform where it actually scales and it's more automated? So the idea is really creating this directory that, say, you go to South Korea and you say, I want to make friends in South Korea. How do I do that? And then it'll ask you, kind of like a chat GPT format. It'll ask you some things about you and what your interests are, your type of friendship style, and give you the communities, whether that's in like specific events, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, but it'll target those interests and where those people are that would be able to connect with you and what you're looking for. So that's really the intent of it. It's like, how do I make this friendship process easier, not just for travelers, but anyone who's looking for friendships in their city?
Now, with your directory that you're creating, how is it far as the price point? How, by it being like something that's like all over the world, what would be, if someone's interested in this and they're traveling, like what would be the cost for this services?
Yeah, so I am really trying my hardest, and I'm in a startup phase right now where I'm in like hackathons and doing incubators and accelerators for this idea, because I'm gathering teams and resources myself to be able to build this the right way from a tech perspective as well, because AI is above my my particular pay grade. But I ideally would not charge the end users. I'm really trying to create this as a B2B product where I would be charging people that are like corporations that maybe are trying to target travelers as well, and have that be in like advertisement form or an affiliate form. Or that's why even with the Travel Not to Escape platform, I'm working and providing consulting services to therapists and doing the charging on the back end and helping them connect with the travelers, but not necessarily charging for the directory itself, because I want to make these resources global and accessible. And when it's global and you have people in all different price points around the world, like the US price point is so high for so many people. So I want to make this accessible for people all over the world that have different ideas of like what therapists cost, right? I don't want to create another barrier for them to access.
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's something I've never thought about, is how do you get mental health services when you're traveling all over from country to country, and you might be somewhere for 3 months. Well, it takes that long sometimes to, really get integrated with somebody. And then there's the licensure pieces of it, and you can't keep your therapist. So what a great system. I do think that that's needed. I think that's a huge barrier for a lot of people. We have it just with our clients, like going on vacation. Our client will
Hmm.
go on vacation to Florida in the summer for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and that's a long time to not have that support. Or over the here in the US, the Thanksgiving holiday, and over winter break. I mean, so many people are traveling, and so many people are traveling to be with their families, so they need a lot of support
Yes, also
during
that.
that time, right? Like that's when we need a lot of support. But when we're traveling to spend time with other people, then we're not getting that support that we're getting like in our week to week, day to day
Hmm.
lives. So I think it's a very needed situation. I had never really thought about that for international, and I think that's what you bring to it, is that perspective of, yeah, I've been doing this. I've
Hmm.
experienced, like, it is hard to find support places. It is hard to do that. And I remember last time that we talked on the show, you had talked about an individual traveler and what a big piece of her plan it was to go, where do I go in the evenings? Like,
Hmm.
what clubs can I go clubs or clubs, right? Like what book
Yeah,
clubs
yeah.
can I go into
Activities,
or what
yeah.
clubs can I go to, depending on the person, right? But where can I go to? Where are people hanging out, and where are people hanging out that have the same interests as I do? And I remember being just really inspired by that because that's not something that I think we generally think about when we're planning a trip. We're going, I need to get
Hmm.
tickets to this, and I need to find a bus that goes
Hmm.
here, right? And all those logistics. So I think you are really tapping into that. And on top of that, the digital nomad uh, is it a it's not a trend. It's what is it now? It's like a lifestyle, right? Where more and more
Yeah.
people are doing this. Revolution, I don't know what it's called, but this is impacting more and more people. And those processes that you're describing, right? Like being out of routine, being out of we're not seeing the people we went to high school with when we go to the grocery store
Hmm.
anymore. Um, that feeling of, well, I gave up my career. I gave up this like steady paycheck situation. So many times we're trying to get away from that. But until we do it, we don't know, right? We don't know. So we go, oh, it'd be
Hmm.
so great to like not have to wake up and do my job in the morning, right? To do work when I want to. And it is great, but we want to make sure that it doesn't turn into something where we go, oh, now I have regret, right? Or now I feel like, oh,
Hmm.
now I got to start back over if I want to go back into that field, right? And so I think that's something that a lot of people maybe don't consider when thinking about transitioning into that. And for you coming in with lived experience and going, yep, I know what that is like. I was working in corporate before, and it is a big change. And gosh, it's great in so many ways. And I think maybe highlighting those pieces, those ways that it is so great in those moments where it doesn't feel as great, can be so helpful. So it sounds like the things that you were already doing in your individual coaching, you're really just expanding those pieces out. Those
Hmm.
pieces that really were individualized are now, okay, how can somebody do this without meeting with me directly or meeting
Yeah,
with Geleen
exactly.
directly face to face? And I think that's great because people can then pick and choose what resources, what pieces of that are going to be most
Hmm.
helpful for their situation. Um, would what would you say to somebody who maybe is experiencing that kind of lull? I mean, I imagine that's got to be kind of a natural part of the process, that feeling of like,
Hmm.
I'm feeling isolated, I'm feeling like, oh, I left my old, life and now I don't know what I'm doing. That's got to be natural, right? That's got to be kind of a natural
Hmm.
part of the process. What would you say to somebody who might be experiencing that right now?
Yeah, it's funny. I was posting on Facebook so I do monthly mental health meetups as part of my community now. So I host that virtually because I want to be able to have these conversations so that people don't feel as if they're the only ones experiencing them. And then I put a guest expert on. We partner and we pick a theme. And so a therapist will be on and host a particular, half like a workshop series to guide them in that particular topic. So next month we're doing connection, for example. So this is very relevant. But as I was posting on Facebook, I had posted about do people choose their locations intentionally in alignment with their goals? And that had a lot of responses in it. And one of which was this guy who is in one of the islands in Thailand, and he's in his fourth month of nomading. And he was like very honest. He DM'd me and he said, I'm actually not choosing them intentionally. I just started and I feel like I'm not in the right place. I'm not making the right friends. I've been hosteling, so I don't have my own room and I don't have any more energy in me to keep going. I might just stop nomading altogether. So then I had actually said, hey, like, this is actually what I do. And I'm like really happy to help you. I'm headed to Thailand. Maybe you should go to this location, Chiang Mai, where I am in right now. It's like, hey, maybe you should go to a location that is known for having a strong community. And there are a lot of cities around the world that have stronger expat and nomad communities where there are already structures in place in terms of events, groups. You can just drop in and then day of you'll like meet a ton of people. and people that are like-minded, also building something new, doing this lifestyle longer term. So I recommended to him, like, hey, if you can, head to Chiang Mai. And there's going to be this Nomad Summit. There's going to be a ton of people there. Here are all these community groups that you can join immediately. And I'll also be there. I'll meet up with you. So that's actually what happened. And he went. He stayed for. He's still here. He's going to be here for the month. And I've gone to like co-workings with him. I've sent him like the list of like 20 community WhatsApp and Facebook groups for him to tap into, which he's gone to. He's made friends, and he's like continuing down this road and is now liking it much better. So he changed the location that he's in. I actually recommended a place for him that wasn't a 16-bed hostel. So I helped him like know how to choose the right environment for him to stay in long term, how to tap into local communities, how to create routines. So some of these like foundational things that you don't think of when you first start traveling, but once he started changing those, his mindset started to become more positive. And now he's like, oh, where are you going next? Maybe I can follow. And I was like, okay, sure, I'm going to Vietnam next. Because it is like such a game changer once you get the hang of like the things that you need. Because they're the same whether you're stationary or traveling, but you forget that. And so once you tap back into that, then you're like, oh, okay, like this is more sustainable.
Yeah, that's super interesting and helpful, I'm sure, because you obviously know a lot about this, where like if one of us probably were to start traveling, we would have no idea either and just pick a random place. How do you
Mhm.
kind of determine then like what is a good location for, is it just because you've been doing it for so long, or how do you know like where those good locations are to go and like how to find connections in those areas?
Yeah, so for me, I start with myself first, and I think that's really why the basis of even the three pillars is like connect with yourself first, because that's the foundation to everything. Like you're not going to connect with the right people if you're not connected with you. So I I assess what are my goals for the next 3 months because that's how I plan my particular travels in like 3 to 6 month intervals. So for the next 3 months, is my goal business building? Is it heads down business building or is it networking? Is it healing and doing like like personal development things, maybe more spiritual focus, maybe more health focused, or is it reconnecting with friends back home? And answers to each one of those puts me in a very different location. So if I wanted to heal and like do the spiritual woo stuff, I'm going to go to Bali. If I'm going to do business building, then there's actually websites specific, like in the nomad community, there's websites specific to the best places for networking with other nomads that are entrepreneurs. Chiang Mai is one of them. A lot of them have conferences on an annual basis. So there's a conference actually this weekend that I'll be hosting a panel about actually mental health and travel on. And it's a great place to network because there's a lot of people that are doing that as well. So, Facebook groups, a lot of us rely on Facebook groups still because the community aspect is still solid, even though Facebook right now is like a little, I don't know, but it is still a solid resource. So I'll go on there, connect with like say digital nomads in Chiang Mai, and there's probably like 50 groups there. And then I do a search on WhatsApp groups because WhatsApp groups are where people actually do a lot of the events. And then from there, you'll start to realize that each city, this is why I'm creating a master directory because each city has their own set of Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, and specific app. So if you are in Chiang Mai, Nomio is an app that you can use. It's also located in Bali. If you are in Spain, Nomadway is the app that you use. So like there's so many different nuances. But a lot of it is really just doing a lot of research and tapping into the existing communities there.
So I know a lot of people from the US that I know personally are jumping into the nomad lifestyle, and a lot of people is going to Thailand. It's like one of their number one places to go
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
And then Bali is,
Mhm.
like somewhere really huge. It's like those are the two places I hear about the most and I see
Mhm.
about friends posting the most, whether it be sometimes single moms or just single adults. They, pack up and go and they just talk
Mhm.
about, the culture, the food, the cost of living. They
Mhm.
was just saying like it's more affordable. I think a lot of times people don't get over their own fears or fear
Mhm.
change. So a lot of times
Yeah.
they don't allow themselves to experience, these type of things. So if you, I know you're saying like you start with yourself first, but just say if someone was interested in like traveling abroad for the first time, what would be in terms of just say like generally, just say safety,
Mm.
or depending on I guess the activities of the things that they're trying to do. So just say like if I'm someone and I want to focus on wellness and this is my first time out of the country, what would what would you recommend, or would that be a place or a community where, if someone was researching that and they can say like, oh, I can go to this particular group or app or these different locations based off my interests and things I want to tap into.
Yeah, so are you looking for a resource or like a strategy?
Correct. Kind of both.
Oh, okay, like both. Okay.
Mhm.
So currently I do this as a strategy session, right? And I think I might have talked to Julie about this, but start with you. Where are you at now? And where do you want to be? Like, what's the feeling that you want to feel? How do you feel now? What's the road that's going to take you there? And then the next step would be really understanding what are the locations that are going to help you in that your own hero's journey. So in terms of resources, there's a lot out there. If you are going to do this as like a nomad, you can check nomads.com, and that actually will list, there's like a certain view that you can look at, and it's free for certain views. Like I think you can look at the top 30 cities. You can look at cost of living, what the weather is like, what communities are there. You can even connect with people on that particular app. It's not an ad for them, but it's one that I use anyway. So that's a resource that I will take a look at just to see what are the possible cities that have potentially established communities where other nomads are going to. And then there's also larger Facebook groups out there that are like solo female travelers or like host a sister or girls love travel. There's a number of like larger international ones, like digital nomads around the world is another one that I'm on. I'm probably on like hundreds. But those are the ones that are very active. So you go with your question of like, hey, I'm looking to, um, bring some more excitement into my life. I like this, and this activity, or like, hey, I really need a place to heal from this that I'm going through. Or I'm like very curious about learning how to underwater basket weave, like where is the location that I can go there, and really relying on community to be able to give you that input. Because as much as you can research yourself, sometimes it's good to be able to ask other people. And so that's where the communities really come into play. And then finding the people that are, I think it's really important to find people that look like you and are like minded as you, because as we know in traveling, especially as a woman of color, like I'm going to trust a woman of color who's going to give me advice on a city. So I like to find groups as well where I have similar identities, because I think that that's going to be a more accurate representation of the perspective that I would also have. And so I would trust that perspective. So it's a process, of course. There's a lot of resources out there. I am trying to centralize it a bit because this is a question that I love to help with, but I also want people to have more immediate access to. So stay tuned over the next couple of months, and maybe I'll have something more automated by then.
Yeah, you've brought up the hero's journey, and I know like even from the last episode that you did with us, like you use that reference quite a lot. And so I was just looking at it because for people who don't know, this is like the monomyth. This is like the base for like every you think of like any story that is like captures people, like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, but like
Wizard of
like
Oz.
any story in the Bible, right? Like any story that really, really connects, that people connect with, and that people can kind of take on a spiritual level, usually follows the hero's journey model. And so that part of that model is that refusal to the call, which I think is so interesting
Yeah.
because Tanisha was talking about how like how difficult it can be for people to
Mhm.
overcome that fear of change. And so I love that it kind of normal, like the pieces that you're doing really do follow that hero's journey model, because you're normalizing those. Those are part of the human experience. That hero's journey is the human experience. That's why we
Hmm.
connect with plot lines and stories that follow this perspective. And then after refusal of the call is meeting the mentor. And
Yeah.
so I love that because that's exactly that piece that you are being the mentor, or this program is being the
Mhm.
mentor for that. And like you said, the more that we connect with the program or with the person, and as you're bringing other perspectives into what you're offering, then it takes away some of those limits that people might have. Like you started with saying, yeah, I was focusing on single women who are traveling, but men are experiencing this as
Hmm.
well. People traveling with kids are experiencing these things. And
Hmm.
so it brings those other perspectives in where we can go, okay, I can get information from a married mom with an 8-year-old who's been to this country and
Hmm.
knows what that's like, and had these ideas. And then the other part of the roads of travel, right? Or the roads of trial within that, like that's you need that to make the story. You need that to do the journey and the healing. So I think what you're doing is really just normalizing that road of trials and telling people, like, yeah, you might be on the road of trials in your hero's
Yeah.
journey. Good. You have to. Like, what good would a Harry Potter movie be without, the dragons coming at you or the other wizards coming at you, right? There wouldn't be a story. There would be no growth or development of those characters. Without those trials in ourselves, there's no growth or development for us as people. And so I feel like are you intentionally modeling this
I
uh,
am.
in your
Yeah.
program? Yeah, it's beautiful, because it really is just that structure of like how we as humans grow and develop based on those experiences that we have. I just think it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and you can really see it with the more travelers that like you connect with, and depending on where in their journey, I'm like, yeah, I can relate. I've been there, or like I know someone who's there right now, and it's great because then in the community, I can connect people together. Like, oh, I know exactly who you need to talk to, and here you go, or here's this resource, this expert that specializes in exactly what you're going through right now. Like, you guys can talk. So it's been really fun being that person in the middle because I talk to so many in both sides. And for the longest time, I'm like, okay, you guys just need to like connect separately because this is going to be a um, good for both of you. So it's been nice to one, I can track it depending on the traveler, and then being able to actually provide them the resources that they need.
Yeah, and as you're going through that process, or as you were going through that process last year of like, like I feel like,
Yeah.
those feelings of like isolation and like feelings of rejection sometimes. Starting a business is always that way, even if you're in your living room doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
as you're going through those, um, what are the continual positives of that change that you made? What are the things that keep you going in that lifestyle?
Yeah, well, freedom is one of my top values. And so, no matter how hard it might be to go through the lulls of entrepreneurship where you're experiencing rejection, isolation, things just aren't flowing consistently on a month-to-month basis, of course. But I think about the version I was like 5 years ago and the version I am now. And it's like, okay, well, yes, there was consistency in money back then, but am I happier now, even with the things that I'm going through, the challenges? And the answer is always yes. The answer is always yes, even through that, like the journey that I went on was worth it. And I know that I'm building towards something, and I just have to keep going. And I know and part of the community aspect is because I've connected with so many people now, I understand that in this process of entrepreneurship as well, like the first 2 years suck for anyone. And you're trying to get these ideas out, and then you're trying to focus on one, and you may not have the training on how businesses work. So you're really feeling like you're alone doing it. And then you see people who are like on stages and doing things, and things just seem to be flowing, but you forget that they're on year 5 or they're on year 15. And when people actually start to talk about that and how many years they put in loss, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So just keep going. There's nothing special to the formula. They just continued and did whatever they could to continue. So I think about that during some of those moments and those challenges. And like, okay, it still was worth it. I like the person that I am much more, and I have the freedom to pivot if I want to change countries if I want to, and also I know that there's something more that's going to snowball once I put in the work that I need to.
Yeah, definitely. And so you have these new services then that are planning to launch next
Yeah.
month in February. Are you still doing the podcast and the coaching, or are you
Mhm.
kind of switching completely then to these new directories?
Yeah, so I'm still doing it all, of course, in
Okay.
like the business world. But I am doing less of the one-to-one, so doing that more rarely, but I still am doing it, and focusing more on like the business consulting side, so partnering with therapists so that there are more therapists to be able to provide services to this community, and also building up these directories. I'm still doing the podcasts, but I've expanded, of course, the guests that are on. So before it was just solo female travelers who had used travel as a way to transform their lives, to serve as a source of inspiration for women that were more hesitant to take the leap. As you mentioned, Tanisha, it's like hard. So I wanted to normalize that through examples. And then as I started expanding this brand, I realized, okay, like there's more out there. There's more people that also want to relate to someone who's done it before. So I want to have male guests on, people with more diverse voices, and then actually have resources as well and experts on that can give people that next step. So I've been interviewing therapists like yourselves, those that can provide services to travelers and talking about specific challenges and what their particular programs or modalities are like, what a therapy session is like, normalizing that process for people that have never done therapy before and don't know what it's like to do an intro call, what questions to ask, and what the whole process is like. I'm also interviewing community leaders, people that are creating these apps and Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and events, and normalizing the fact that they're there in whatever city that there is and how to tap into it in their city or in whatever app that they're using and who is that app for, so that people know what those resources are. And I'm also interviewing other entrepreneurs. So as part of this panel that I'm on over the weekend, I'm interviewing three entrepreneurs who are in like year 10 of their business, who've experienced challenges, of course, through the process. And the topic is building big dreams without breaking yourself. So as part of the panel, and I'm actually doing this panel in a couple different conferences. And so I'm interviewing those panelists as well, to normalize the fact that they've also gone through these same challenges. And just because they're in year 10 and doing international businesses and they're on stages and they're like 7 times bestseller published books, doesn't mean they didn't experience the same things that people are going through right now. So those my guest list is much broader now.
So my question to you is if you had someone who's new to wanting to live this type of lifestyle, how are they able to maintain far as cost when it comes to traveling or just having what amount of money do you need to have saved if this is something
Mhm.
you're interested in doing? Because like a lot of times when you see these groups, you see people traveling and you're like, oh, that looks so exciting, but
Mhm.
you don't know how they maintaining their lifestyle to be able to
Mhm.
travel, and I think some
Yeah.
people jump in it and then they realize, like you
Mhm.
say, it can be isolating, it can be lonely, you gave up your job or career and now just
Mhm.
see if you had a certain amount of money saved, your money's getting low and you're not replenishing those funds. Like what recommendations would you have for someone who's thinking about entering a
Yeah.
lifestyle?
Yeah, I would say take a look at what your expenses are and really get a good understanding. So like I have my own personal balance sheet and I have had that for like the last decade, and that's comes from my own like consulting finance background, but everyone should have their own personal balance and income statement for their lives and understand what your cash flow in and out is. What are your expenses? And if you were to remove your largest expenses, which is probably going to be rents, how much do you actually spend on a day to day on what? And then figure out what countries are you attracted to going for the first year that you were going to do this lifestyle. A lot of people in the first year go to bucket list destinations, totally fine. What are those bucket list destinations and what's the cost of living there? So what I like to do, because a lot of people ask these questions on like forums, and it's really hard to gauge because everyone's standard of living is very different. So if you were to say you're going to go to Chiang Mai, Thailand, that's your bucket list destination for you. You're like, I want to quit my job and I want to go there. So I would take a look at what your runway is and calculate how many months, if you were to receive no income starting on a certain date, if you were to receive no income moving forward, how many months worth of bills can you cover? Not including like living expenses quite yet, but like your just basic debt and things that you have to pay. If you were to remove like rent, for example, like how does that extend your runway? So say you have like 6 months, or I'm trying to think of like how much that would be in like US prices, but like let's say like you have $2,000 a month that you know you can spend after you've cleared everything. So then, say 2,000 a month for 6 months is your runway. Now you take a look at the countries that you want to go to. Thailand, as you mentioned, is one of the places with a high standard of living for a low cost. So personally, I'm in Chiang Mai right now. I'm in high season, so it is a little pricier, but I was able to find this place that I'm in right now, which I'm staying in like hotel apartment. And I think I paid $550 for the month. And I'm in a nice area. I'm right next to Old City, so it's walkable, it's safe. I'm on the third floor. It's quiet, it's beautiful. It's like really nice and modern, AC, all these things, right? So like the standard of living, like this is equivalent to what my Chicago apartment was. So then I think, okay, besides the rents, which you can take a look at once you do the accommodation, what are the types of restaurants that you would personally eat at? Like you're probably, if you don't have a kitchen like I don't, you're probably going to eat out every day and it's cheap enough to do that. But I would actually Google search the nearby restaurants that I'm interested in going and look at their menus and what the cost is for that particular location. Calculate I'm going to eat out 3 times a day. And then I think about travel insurance and I think about flights if I'm going to travel maybe once every couple months to reset my visa. So really start to think of like, okay, how much will it actually cost me to live in Thailand? The cost ends up being, if you're doing it rather frugally, but still in like a good standard of living, maybe like 1,000, 1,200 if you're going out and doing things. I don't personally drink, so that's not part of the cost. So you can cater to this to yourself, and then you start to realize, oh, well, 1,200 is actually not that high for the quality of life. I'm eating out 3 times a day. I'm going to activities. I have hobbies and I'm not working and I can do this for 6 months. So now you have like a period of time where you free yourself from maybe the corporate world and the things that you had to stress about. Give yourself a couple of months to just not think about anything and just enjoy. And then start to think from there, once you have a more open mindset, streams of income that you already have based on the experience that you've gained through the jobs that you've held. In my case, I realized, oh, okay, I've already been doing healthcare consulting for all of these different hospitals on a national level. Like, can I use these skills in my business and be able to do it freelance? And I realized, oh, I can. So then I started my own practice specifically with this. Other people have pivoted maybe their analytical skills and done that freelance, or they've pivoted into doing sales if they were in sales, or even like travel nursing and consulting instead. Or like, what are the ways that you can do this online? And what's your number that you have to reach to live in the countries that you want to live in? So Thailand, your number might be 1,500. and you're comfortable and you're good. And that's probably the similar number for a lot of places in Southeast Asia. Other like Japan's going to be higher. If you're in Europe, that number is probably going to be closer to 3,000. If you're in Latin America, it'll probably be like 2,500. So think of what that number is, but for uh, more people are surprised that that number is way lower than what they're actually paying in the US. So that's just there's a little more detail probably, but that's actually what I like recommend people to do if they're about to take this leap so that they actually have like data around what it is and they feel comfortable with those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised when you say those numbers. I'm like, wow, that's really good. And I know that that's what brings a lot of people to the area as well because of
Hmm.
the high standard of living and comparatively with the low cost. But I love
Hmm.
all of those examples of like, yeah, do the math on it. Like, put down,
Hmm.
this is how much it's going to be. And there are so many things that I mean, your platform is Travel Not to Escape. There are so many things that we spend money on in our day-to-day life as we're coping with things that we don't love about, right? Like
Hmm.
it's freezing cold outside right here, right? And so like there are things that we spend money on to cope with that situation that we might not have to spend money on then. Things like also commuting, and work clothes and stuff like that that we have to that we spend money on and drive-throughs on the way to work and on the way home from work,
Hmm.
all of those expenses that can really add up that if we eliminated that part of it, then we wouldn't have those expenses as well. And I think that's
Hmm.
great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show here. You can find Geleen on Instagram at Geleen on the Go or at Travel Not to Escape. You can also go to the website www.travelnottoescape.com. And also, if you search Travel Not to Escape on Facebook, that's where I've been tracking. I'm like seeing like, oh yeah, there's this event coming up, and there's like these posts and then people are commenting on it, and so that's a really great place to get started and kind of get connected with other people in that area. So wonderful information, and I do think that it's a niche that is needed. I had not thought about that before. How do you get mental health care while you're doing that? And also healthcare, I think in general is a
Hmm.
great, place to be helping people as well. How do I do healthcare when I'm traveling around from country to country? So
Yeah, that's a whole
very,
nother topic. Yeah.
that's a whole
Yeah.
thing, right? I mean, you've got this direction that you're going just really has a lot of need because there's so many people who are so new to doing it, and because you've got the experience, you can really be that mentor and help walk people through the resources that you've collected. So it's awesome. I'm so excited to keep getting updated and seeing all of the things that you're doing.
Yes, definitely.
I'm Geleen Antonio, and I need a counselor.
Well, I'm Chrissa Hunt.
Yay.
I'm Tenesha Gaffney.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
It's over to you.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.